Before I begin the sermon, I want us to do a little practice. If you have a right hand, and I know most of you do, please raise it up. Okay. Now I want you to pretend you're holding something, and I want you to pretend you're holding something out to somebody. Okay? Let's do it again. Lift it up, pretend you're holding on to something, and hold it out. Okay. Like I mentioned last week, we had 5,000 of these things produced. And what we call them are gift cards, because you're inviting people to hear about the greatest gift ever given, and that's Jesus Christ and the salvation that He gives us and brings us back into reconciliation with God. And so it's an invitation to come to worship service with all the information on the back. And the fact that you guys just proved to me that you can do this shows me that you guys can all take these cards and hand them out. So after worship services, on the back foyer table, we have these. And so give them out to people. If you're afraid and you don't know how to share the gospel yet, which will help equip and prepare you to do, the least you can do is at least start passing these out. And we got 5,000 of these things, and we can get even more if you guys are really ambitious. And that would be great. So I just want to encourage you, after worship service, check the foyer table, grab some of these, and start passing them out. And when you hear me talk about them, I call them the little gift cards, because they're allowing people to hear about the gift of Christ. And so just do that, and it'll be a great encouragement. And like we said last week, we're going to be risk takers. We're going to be walking by faith because God's pleasure is our goal. Today when I was thinking about this sermon, and some of you have seen the sermon handout, and it's about persecution. And this was a hard sermon for me to prepare and to teach, because one of the hard things about being a preacher is sometimes you have to preach things that people don't necessarily like to hear about. As a preacher, it's so easy to preach and teach about all the things that Christ is going to give you. You're going to get grace and joy and salvation and relationship with God. Those are the kind of sermons we preachers like to stand up and say, hey, this is what Christ has to offer you. This is wonderful. And everyone gets excited and jazzed up. But one of the hard things that we sometimes need to do is to remember some of the costs that we're going to have to pay in following Jesus Christ. And that is, one of those costs is persecution. And so, as I was trying to think and prepare and meditate and write the sermon, I decided to go and take a drive in my car. Because I was just asking myself, I was praying to God, saying, God, give me the words to say to these people about persecution, because I struggle with this. This is a hard message. This is something that people don't like to hear about. This isn't something that Christians really don't want to hear about, but it's something that is so essential in regards to their faithfulness, in regards to their service to the Lord, in regards to their becoming more like Jesus Christ. And so as I was driving, I was just trying to remember all the times I've been persecuted for my faith because of Christ. And I was driving around for a while, and I was remembering all these things, and I was getting a little discouraged. But something amazing happened. When I drove back into my driveway, instead of being down or depressed, I was smiling and happy and joyful and excited, because I was remembering all those times, and I remembered the greatest times I felt closest to God was when I endured persecution. The times that I felt like I was pleasing God were at times of persecution. When I feel like I made the greatest difference for the Lord, and the time that I felt this intimacy with Him, were those times when I endured persecution. Instead of having an attitude that says, I'm going to serve you only if I get joy, only if I get blessed in those situations, but changing my perspective, saying, I will serve you despite this. I will serve you despite persecution, despite suffering, despite sacrifice. And the more I understood that, the more I realized that's what God intended for me to have. I think about the apostles, and I think about how they rejoiced when they were beaten, because they understood Christ better. I think about how Paul was crucified to himself so that he could understand Christ better. And I just understand, you know what, those are the moments that really build up our faith. I mean, think about the prophet Daniel. Daniel is one of my heroes of the Old Testament. Now, do we rejoice in his faith because he was an administrator among pagan countries and say, hey, that guy believed in God? What really excites us about Daniel is Daniel chapter 6, because lions are there. He's saying, regardless of persecution, regardless of what men say, I'm not going to stop praying and worshiping and serving my God. I don't care if you throw me to the lions. And so the fact that he endured lions says, ooh, that's so great. I mean, we rejoice in his faith because he was willing to overcome persecution. He was willing to be faithful to God despite persecution. And I think about that in regards to my faith and say, what lions do I have in my life? Am I willing to overcome the name calling and people abandoning me and people thinking less of me, all because of Christ? I mean, that's the exciting thing, is I want to be people like Paul. I want to be people like Daniel, people that says, despite all the things that people may do against me, I am growing closer to my God. I understand the cross better. I understood what Christ endured for my sake. And because of that, I can do nothing but share Christ. I mean, you think about those Hollywood comedians. I mean, what makes a comedian good? It's those that really don't care if you laugh at them. They don't care how ridiculous they are. And I think, what if we had that attitude? That we don't care if people laugh at us. We don't care if we look silly. We don't care about all these different scenarios. But instead we say, because I want to serve God, I'm going to live this way. One of the things that I often think about is I think a lot of times we get a wrong view of persecution. We get a wrong view of persecution because we get this concept that it is so bad. Even in the church, sometimes we may not intentionally mean to do this, but we kind of make it sound like persecution is a bad thing. But in regards to what Scripture teaches us, it's those times where it allows us to celebrate. I mean, if we endure persecution, we stand up against it, what did John Mark say? We'll receive that crown of life. I mean, that's exciting. I mean, it draws us closer to the heart and mind of God and we understand the cross better. That's exciting. The fact that we are taking risks of faith and we know regardless of how men are going to treat us, we do them anyway for God and God is being glorified. This is not something to be feared, but something to be rejoiced about. This is something to be excited about and celebrate, saying, I am doing the will of God. I mean, think about it. If you're not receiving persecution, what is your faith being like? Are you taking risks that would cause you to be persecuted? It reminds me of when I was younger, and I would be on these soccer teams or these basketball teams, and the coach would pick out a bad player who was on the team and just say, go stand off into the corner and just try to stay out of the way. And so we never passed them the ball. The other team never defended against that person because they knew that person was never going to do anything. You see, that's the kind of person who's unwilling to walk by faith and not be persecuted. They don't have to be God. Satan doesn't have to really attack them because they're not doing anything. We don't want to be like that. We want to be ones who are doing the will of God to the point where Satan's getting so angry, so frustrated, that he will do everything possible to discourage you. And he will try to discourage you with all this persecution. And so one of the things that I want to accomplish today is I want us to start changing our view of persecution. It's not something that we should run towards out of just some sense of piety or because we're adventure seekers, but we should also not be ones who should run away from it. You see, one of the things we understand about Christ and about the gospel is that it naturally offends people. We don't have to go out and try to offend people. We shouldn't try to go out and offend people. But when you speak the truth, when you live a godly life, when you're sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, you are naturally going to offend people. Is that not what Jesus Christ did? Jesus lived the most perfect life possible. Jesus was one who was preaching the message of the gospel and of the kingdom and the love of God and God's justice. But despite all that, the world hated him. They despised him. They persecuted him. They plotted ways to kill him. Were they persecuting him because he was evil or because he was good? They persecuted him because he was good. And so if we are wanting to walk in the footsteps of Jesus, we need to be ones that says, we live so good, we speak the truth, we do all these things just as Jesus did, and we're doing it for God's glory. And we know that one of the inevitable consequences of that is that people are going to hate us. People are not going to like what we say. But I think about this example, and I understand this understanding of persecution because